Things that I saw in the past week or two about relationships. Says the Shabbat. We were hosted the Shabbat. We went away on a Shabbaton, and we were hosted by a family in Efrat, and there were some other guests there, and it was quite beautiful and enlightening, and a little bit quite telling about the way life works and the relationships in and around the family. Because the couple that hosted us had two of their children home. One was a single guy, 25-year-old, and it was lovely to see his relationship with his parents, and he helped out with the serving and the discussion, and that was lovely. And they also had a married daughter with her relatively new husband and young baby. So they were a young couple. And so we see the relationship with the grandchild, children and grandchildren. And at the same time, they were in the house for Shabbat visiting the father's mother and the mother's mother. Both of them are quite elderly and both with dementia. Dementia, it happens. It's part of very common now, more and more. In which they participated in the conversation. They were there at the table. But one of them, for example, asked me where I'm from about 5 times. Each time I answered them, we had a nice conversation. Oh, I'm from there, I'm from nearby, whatever. And the conversation repeated itself a few times. This is something that's part of the condition of that. It's called dementia. But everybody was very respectful and nice to her. And the other mother-in-law, it was the mother-in-law, she came with her caregiver. You know, and sometimes people get old and they can't take care of themselves. They have I don't know where they were from. India, the Philippines. There's a lot of caregivers here in Israel that come from the eastern countries. There's Sri Lankans. There's all kinds of different caregivers. But it was beautiful because she sat at the table together with the whole family, and next to her employer, this woman with dementia, and she took care of her. I saw her organizing. Unfortunately, sometimes you lose control over your bowels, and so there was diapers and all sorts of padding that she put down here and there, and of course helping her get around. Excuse me. But and this is a pretty normal thing, and so you have there the generations, from grandmother with her helper, getting old and needing care, all the way down to the great-grandchildren. Essentially, it was her great-grandchild who was there as a couple months old baby. And so when we talk about the importance of relationships in a family, this is normal, all different kinds, and knowing how to navigate and how to be respectful, listen, give dignity to the young, to the old, to all the various generations. That was something I thought that was beautiful, and the very fact that they also hosted myself and my wife, and we didn't know them before. We ran the Shabbaton, and so they needed a place for us to sleep as well. So we stayed with them, and they were very welcoming to us. And they gave us they had an extra room in their home for us to sleep in, and we ate a meal with them, and they were very welcoming and made us feel very comfortable. And so we have achnasat orchim, which is another type of relationship with guests that come from outside the house. So this is it's just one small little story, one little small window into how central is our human interactions into what it means to make a Torah home. All this is part of Shabbat. This is what makes the Shabbat. And we, of course, had the food for Shabbat, and we said the Kiddush, and we have all the all the rituals. But essentially, the main point was the atmosphere there on Shabbat. And they offered us to light the candles there, because that was our home for the Shabbat. We actually lit candles at a different home where we were eating. Friday night we ate at a different home. They also welcomed us in, and I have this egg allergy, so they made me special chalot without eggs. So they were very, very sensitive, very high level of hospitality, of sensitivity to each other. And I think it's something to take away from such a home. Now, I want to say also the other side of the coin, and that sometimes it's you have to know how to be a guest also. Of course, we said thank you, and we're very appreciative, and we brought a gift when we came. Just like, house gifts, I think potted plant we had prepared, and we gave it to them. So it's nice. So they should realize that they're appreciated, all their efforts, and there was some mishaps, and two fellows who we expected to come didn't come. And they called like an hour or two before Shabbat and saying, I have this excuse, that excuse, work late, whatever it is. But I think, I'm not judging them, and, maybe they had no choice, but it's not really nice. People prepared for them. They were expecting them. They prepared foods for them. They cleared up a room for them to sleep. And then you don't come. So it's that's not it's not right. It's not right. It was a mistake. It shouldn't happen. But I'm talking about it because you should realize, I think people who are hosted should realize the host invests. The host puts the efforts towards hosting you, and you have to appreciate everything that goes into it. And it's not simple because you're added into the mix which already exists of a grandchild, of a parent, of an elderly parent, of great-grandchildren. It's not always so easy for them to arrange, oh, okay, they said yes, they'll have me for Shabbat, but I prefer to go somewhere else. If you already make plans, you should follow through because people prepare and they have to be sensitive to that. So I think there's lessons to be learned here. Of course, sometimes there are things beyond your control. There was someone called up, at least that was a few days beforehand. Someone said, I was taken to Miluim, you're called up, so we're not going to come. Say, it happens. But at least they knew a day or two beforehand, not an hour before Shabbat. One of the families came over to where I was eating, and they were looking for their guest. So they didn't know, is he coming, is he not coming? And they had the Shabbat meal, but they felt bad. They don't want a guest wandering the streets. They felt responsible for somebody they were expecting. And so that, it shouldn't have happened that way. It's a mistake. And whatever, we have to learn. We have to learn from our mistakes, to be more sensitive to others, to be a good guest, as well as a good host. And being a good guest includes, of course, coming, bringing a gift sometimes. It doesn't have to be expensive. The point is not the money. The point is you show that you appreciate their efforts. And, of course, participating in the conversation. I was asked to say Dvar Torah. Okay? I had to have something up my sleeve. You have to be ready. Okay, so as the fellow said to me, since you obviously have a Dvar Torah because your first name is Rabbi. So for sure you have a Dvar Torah. But even if your first name is not Rabbi, you learn in yeshiva. You're studying Torah. So your host should expect you to share some Torah. You've had that experience? I see some smiles here.
I don't usually prepare.
You don't usually prepare. Okay, it's something to think about. Sometimes, people work all week long, and because most people work to provide a living, and they miss it. They would like to be studying Torah, And so when they have a guest, they're more than happy to host you. But then they look at you and say, "Well, what did you do all week? You're not working. You're in yeshiva." Okay, so share something. Share some words of Torah. Doesn't have to be a 10-minute long, 20-minute long shiur. But one idea, you should always try to distill something from the classes, something from your own personal learning. You should be able to give over some words of Torah.
I don't like if someone really says I give a few 10 seconds or 15 seconds of the Torah.
It's a little meager.
Show us.
It's a little meager. It's not really a question of how long it is. The question is if you actually have something to say. You have something to add, either something on the parsha or something you learned, even if it's about halacha, whatever that's engaging you and your mind. If you care about it, then you can share that with others. And I think that you should get into the habit of preparing a Dvar Torah. We had a little exercise here in the class this morning. In the earlier class, I asked students to prepare something. And we had some nice presentations, some nice sharing of Torah. I don't always have to be the one to talk. So that's something else about being a guest, that be ready. Also sharing about my personal life. They asked me about what's this organization you run for Gerim and what's going on. And so, looking at it from the outside, a little bit, it was almost like they were grilling me. Like I was put on stage and so, I had to explain. But it's actually quite normal for you to share a little bit about what you're doing, especially I came in representing this group, and that's why they were hosting me. But even if not, you are expected to maybe share something about your life, about your history, about what's, you can't just come and expect to be fed and not open your mouth, not participate in the conversation. So that's important to keep in mind, that the different aspects, different sides of hosting and being hosted. And we always talk about Avraham Avinu and giving chesed and opening up his tent. Right? How many doors were there to Avraham's tent? They say there were all four sides. His tent was open on all four sides. I sometimes, last wedding I did, or 2 weddings ago, I've done so many weddings. I think I told the other class that it came time for him to put on a new talit and it wasn't there. Somebody had to go run and get it. So, okay, what do we do now? So I said, okay, I'll share some Torah. But I hadn't really prepared. I already said the Torah that I had prepared under the chuppah. So I said, well, I'll share some more ideas. So I spoke about, here we are under the chuppah. The chuppah is like a tent, like the tent of Avraham. It's a house, but it's an open house. And wish that you should have an open house to welcome guests and all that. So it's this idea of having guests and hosting others is a basic principle. So we always talk about how you should be giving and achnasat orchim, but the other side of the coin is how to be a guest. It's also important. In that same story with Avraham Avinu, the Midrash tells us that who were his guests, by the way? Who were Abraham's guests?
The
Three angels. People, angels is a little unclear. They're called angels, but they're also called people. And what did Abraham do for them?
The best of the sheep.
He gave them food and drink. It actually says meat and milk, which is a little strange. In any case, the only problem with that is if they were angels, angels don't eat. They don't have to eat.
They don't have lots of kashrut?
They don't eat. They don't eat that. There's no laws of kashrut. Maybe that's why they can have meat and milk. But the point is, the Midrash says the angels pretended to eat.
How do you pretend to eat?
If you're an angel, you can do it. You sort of put it on your fork, and then when they're looking the other way, hey, look, there's a bird. You give it to the dog. There's all sorts of tricks you could do. I don't know if Avram had a dog, but
there's a midrash that says he does.
Is that right?
It's about why the cat and dog aren't friends with each other.
Yeah.
That the cat, they were friends, but then the cat went to Abraham and then made the dog promise that the dog wouldn't take up lodging with Abraham Avinu. And so the dog wanders, and then the dog's a peasant, and he can't find anywhere suitable to live. So the dog ends up living with Abraham Avinu. And the cat's all mad. He says, "You made a vow you wouldn't come." And then that's why the cat and dog are mad at each other to this day.
I've never heard that midrash. That's fascinating. I wonder where'd you get that?
Legends of the Jews.
Legends of the Jews. Very interesting. Yeah, it's a nice collection. The point is, this midrash is telling us that when you're a guest, there's expectations. Let's say they serve you food and you don't like it. It could happen. You're used to spicy food and they give you bland food. Or the opposite. You're used to bland food and you take one bite. Your mouth is on fire. Oh, you like spicy, I know. But it's what do you do? So you really should make every effort to not offend the host. Listen, if it's someone tell a story, I actually think it's my mother and father. It's somewhere in my family that this story is going around that when they first got married, my mother didn't know how to cook. She was a single woman. She never cooked for herself, and she cooked the dinner for the first time. And I think by accident she put in pepper instead of salt. Ooh. If I'm not mistaken, I have to check with my brothers. If I'm not mistaken, the story is told that my father ate the soup and said, "Oh, it's so delicious," and had more. Ate the whole bowl. He didn't say anything because he didn't want to offend his wife. It's beautiful, beautiful story. I think I've heard about other couples as well. Is that you have to. If you can't, you can't. Obviously, you could make some excuse or ask for some bread or something like that, or put in some salt. But generally, it's not the place to give pointers about cooking and say, "Oh, this is terrible food." Say that to yourself. If you don't like the dish, don't eat it that you prepared. But to your hosts, it's not polite. Even if you think that they're the worst cook you've ever seen and the food is terrible, you should try to finish your dish. Ultimately. Sometimes it's very, very hard, and you could say, "I don't feel well," or make some excuse. But they prepared the food, even if it's not the highest cuisine. When they made the efforts to cater to you. I see I'm touching on some interesting points here, sensitive points. Yes, Benjamin. Yeah.
And this attitude that the African aristocracy, upper class, used to do to foreigners that don't know how to behave. They have exquisite food and they offer for the lady invited, and sometimes it's so terrible, even you can't imagine. Mm-hmm. And then you see everybody want to laugh.
They do it on purpose?
Oh, of course.
Oh no.
Oh, of course.
As a practical joke? Are they trying to embarrass her?
No.
They're trying to test her?
Oh, next time you see, please, next time don't come. So.
Oh, they want to get rid of the guest.
Yes.
They don't want her to come back, so they give her bad food. Interesting. That sounds like Sodom. That sounds like right in Sodom. They say the opposite of Avraham Avinu. There, they disallowed having guests. So you're not allowed to have guests. That's the story with Lot, and he invites them in, and the town folk get angry because it's against the rules. In this town, we don't have guests. So yeah, but wow. Okay, that's an interesting custom.
Yes.
Okay, other things that I wanted to point out to you when it comes to hosting as well. So I spoke in shul. I spoke in the shul twice. Two different shuls. I made sure Once upon a time, I spoke in shul, must be 30 years ago. I was a young yeshiva boy coming back from yeshiva. Yeshiva boy, he's going to give us a shir, he's going to give us a drasha. So they allowed me to speak in shul. So I gave up, and I prepared, and I gave a nice drasha, and afterwards, someone came up to me and said, you have a very nice drasha. It was a very nice drasha, very nice shiur you gave, but it was missing 2 words. What words did I miss out? He says, Birshut Harav. When you start off, you should say, with permission of the rabbi. So you're not supposed to give Torah in front of the rabbi. There's a rabbi there who's the rabbi of the community, the rabbi of the shul. And now, it's a little bit of a technicality because ultimately he knows that you've been invited to speak. So it is with his permission. But it is a courtesy to start off the speech and say, with permission of the rabbi, like we say when we do Birkat HaMazon. Right? What do we have Birkat HaMazon? We have Zimun, the call to the grace after the meal. So we mention with the permission of the rabbi, the host, whoever it is, Birshut, whoever needs to be shown courtesy. Because they're the hosts or because they're rabbis. Some people say Birshut HaKohanim. The Kohanim are there. We have a mitzvah to show honor to the Kohanim. So all these little cues are important. And one other thing that I started with, and that is another principle in the Talmud. It says whenever you're going to give a drasha, potchim bichfod achsanya. Means you open with giving honor to the host. Achsanya is a modern word. We use it in Hebrew for a hostel. Some place where you're staying. But in the original, it means you have to first show courtesy to your hosts. And so I gave thanks to the community, to the shul, because there were a lot of people involved with this Shabbaton. So it's always important to recognize and give honor and respect to the people that are hosting you, the people that are giving you this hospitality. Don't take it for granted. Sometimes especially when you're in yeshiva, you don't have your own home, so many times you go to someone else's home. Don't take it for granted. Always make sure. At various points in your life, you could be hosted by other people, and even when you go to your children, I wouldn't take it for granted. Make sure that you show that you recognize they're making efforts for you, and that's a basic. Also, we've had stories, sometimes it comes back to us, that students have gone to a certain family. They're learning in yeshiva, they're learning lots of laws, they're learning how things should be done, and they start to lecture the host. They start to say, well, listen, I really have to, I have to go now for mincha, or I have to go to, and maybe they even want to sing Zmirot. I'll tell you, personally, this one of the meals I was at, I think both meals, they only sang one zemer, one song. I'm used to singing more. I like to sing. I think it's a beautiful thing to sing. I think it's educational to sing. And it's part of my service of God. The way I worship Hashem is by singing at the Shabbos table. It was missing for me because I was a guest. You think I said anything? It's their table. It's their home. They run the Shabbat table the way they prefer. And I'm not going to force my customs upon them. And so some people, sometimes beginners even, they learn how things are supposed to be done, and they expect every home or every host to be practicing exactly the way they learned. And if it's not, then they say, hey, you're doing it wrong.
It's very important.
It's very important. It's very important.
All the rabbis here is like teaching us to be perfect.
That's right.
And when we go to some place and we see different things, like
That's
this
right.
comes out.
That's right. So that's why I'm talking about it now. Yes.
Thank you so much for telling this to us, it's
Yes.
always needed. Like every once in a while, if you keep repeating it, it will be like ingrained.
That's right.
We know
I have,
what to expect and what to
Yes.
I have
It's
friends.
not polite. It's not polite to tell them what to do. It's their home. They do as they do. It's not like they're violating, eating on Yom Kippur. It's not like they're giving you tray food. If you're going to be a guest in their home, they have their customs and they have their way of doing things. And when you have your own home, you'll do what you believe to be perfect, what your rabbis are telling you is the best way to do things. But you can't tell them and expect them to cater to you and change around their whole style of religious life. And everybody, maybe it's not the ideal religious life, but you can't expect them to be held up to the standard of what you hold to be ideals. And if you're a guest, you have to accept less than ideal, assuming that you know what is ideal. It could be that there's just many paths to many ways. Some people like to sing, some people don't. You don't have to sing Zmirot. It's not an obligation. And maybe they prefer to conduct their Shabbat atmosphere in a different way. Maybe they like it to be more, laid back. Maybe they're not going to say Dvar Torah. You're going to be saying Torah a little bit in the Birkat HaMazon. You're saying the brachot. Bare minimum, you have your Shabbat meal. You can't force your customs and expectations on your host. Yes, Shlomo.
I have a couple of friends who I've been going to for years. And so after they cut the challah, they didn't put it in
Salt. They didn't dip in the salt.
I years ago I asked, why aren't you putting on? I asked why they're not.
You asked, okay. Didn't complain, yeah.
So he said, the Shita of the Rambam, I think it was, said, you don't.
But the idea is, I think a lot of people say that most recipes for challah have salt in it. So there's salt already inside the challah. So you don't have to dip.
A couple of weeks ago, I went to another friend, and he's a Yaki.
Right.
So he did Italian before he made Kiddush.
Right.
So what he said to me before, we do something.
Right. It's quite rare, but it is the original German minhag, right?
The son-in-law also does it that way. So
Right. You weren't so surprised, but you may be surprised. There's so many customs. There's so many different styles, and you have to really have an open mind and not be demanding in any way and tell them that they're wrong. If you find something interesting, you can ask. Asking about it is fine. Usually, it's not like a complaint. You may learn something if you ask about why you're doing something this way or not that way. If you feel that they might feel like you're criticizing, then I would wait. Afterwards, come and ask me. ask somebody, one of your rabbis, about, is there such a custom and why do they do it that way or that way? And you might learn something. But if you feel like there'll be a criticism, don't ask. You'll do what they do. Yes, so what you wanted to say?
I think this is what you were talking about. The very important subject. Me as being invited in different, I always did. I don't say a word. Why?
Why?
I don't know the customs, the attitude.
Right.
But here, people seem that it's free.
Aha.
And I get shocked, then
Well, you can sort of feel what's going on. There's different homes. In some homes, a Shabbat meal is pretty much like a lecture. The head of the household, he sings the Zmirot. He says the Torah. And the people around the table don't really participate so much. In other communities, everybody's talking at once. Also, in terms of the food, some people, they put the food on the table and everybody takes a little bit of this salad, a little bit of this chicken, whatever it is. And sometimes they bring the plate, they make a plate for you out of the kitchen. And you don't get any choice. You get your food. That's it. They don't have central serving dishes or anything like that. There's different customs. We really have to be I find it enriching usually to see different customs, but you have to be careful not to be demanding or not to be critical, and especially if you're a guest. Yeah. Um, like we said, those angels, they said, okay, we're going to do the custom. We're going to eat, even though we don't need to eat. Sometimes even if you're not so hungry, you'll eat something because the host is expecting you. They made the food. They expect you to eat. There's the opposite as well. Okay, there's 6 people around the table, and they bring out 7 pieces of chicken. And you're hungry. So should you be the one to take that double portion? Maybe not. Sometimes the guests come, and he's really hungry, and he eats, and he eats, and he eats, and he eats more, and he eats a lot, and he eats more than everybody else. That's also not appropriate. It's not appropriate to eat less. It's not appropriate to eat more. You have to be aware of your surroundings, and so if they offer you and you're hungry, of course you're allowed to eat. It's not like you're not allowed to, but you should make sure that you're not too far off from the norm. Norm is usually they do offer you seconds if it depends on the community. But in some places, you just get your plate. That's it. Everybody gets it. They can't afford it. I was once in a home, and they were very, very poor. And they really had a bare minimum of food. And yet they invited me to join them. And I ate less than I was used to eating. And they ate less because I was the guest. That was their choice. They invited me. They wanted to share from the meager bread that they had. And that's a wonderful thing. Baruch Hashem, a lot of people here are much more well off, and nobody's really counting their pieces of bread. But there's all kinds of homes, and the fact that they invited you doesn't mean that you have it all you can eat, and you can eat them out of house and home. If you see that there's, sometimes you have to be aware and sensitive to what's going on. If there's not enough for everybody, so they pass around the dish. Some people take 2 pieces right away because they're hungry. They're not aware that, that means that somebody else down the line won't get 1 if you take a double portion or a triple portion. So you really have to be sensitive and not overstay your welcome also in terms of time. Sometimes guests want to stay because they have nowhere to go. They go home, they go to an empty apartment maybe, and they're really enjoying the atmosphere. But they don't see that the host is yawning and looking at his watch, and like he doesn't want to kick you out. But really, you'd be happy if the meal's over. It's time to go. And the opposite also. Sometimes, you're in a rush. You have to go. You have another program. You have somebody to meet. But he wants to have his meal slowly, and you want to bench. You want to finish your meal and say it's inappropriate. You really have to try to match your timing, match your pace, match your style to the style of your hosts. These are the laws of being a guest, not only of hosting others. So a lot to speak about. Last comment, Binyamin.
I had the opportunity last week. One poor colleague of us.
He ate and left. So if it's a meal during the week and it's not a communal meal, you're not together, you need some food, so nutrition, so you eat and run. Everybody at their own pace. But if it's, I'm talking about a Shabbat meal, I'm talking about, when you're it's a social event. And so that is inappropriate. They, like I said before, they don't want you to come and eat, but they also want you to share your story, share some Torah, and participate in the singing. If they're singing, if you don't know how to sing, okay, but if you can, open up, try to follow. Don't just another thing that it's a pet peeve of mine. When we're singing Zmirot, not everybody knows the songs. Sometimes 2 people sitting next to each other will start a conversation. Oh, I'm trying to sing a song with everybody, and it's disturbing that they're having this private conversation. Or even when I'm saying a Dvar Torah.
Rob Linson's father-in-law. he says at the beginning of the meal, especially in Chasero, when we sing Zmirot, no one talks.
He's been burnt, I guess, by people doing that, and so he makes it clear. People don't know this etiquette that I'm talking about. They haven't been to my shir. Nobody coming out of our shir now is going to make that mistake again. But the Seder, listen, this is our last class for a little bit of a break, Bein Hazmanim. And Bezrat Hashem, I hope all of you enjoy some being guests at people's homes, whether it's for the Seder, whether it's for the first day, the Shabbat, the Chol HaMoed, there's another Shabbat before, Shabbat afterwards. Everything that we said about being sensitive to your hosts and being a good guest, it will stand you in good stead. And personally, I hope we find the time, the arrangements with, to make the balance between my personal family and you guys. I'd love to have you all at the right time. And I had you all about 2 weeks ago. I had almost all of you were in my house. Baruch Hashem. We had a nice Shabbaton. But we'll do it again. And Bezrat Hashem. So for now, Be'atzlacha. And I hope you all get good invites also to like the home that has the best food and the nicest atmosphere. And the main thing is you should have a joyous and peaceful holiday. We should all have Geula Shlema. We should have the complete redemption very soon. So for now, I'll say Shavua Tov and Chag Sameach.
I have seen